Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the HR Leaders Podcast, the show where we explore the future of work with industry experts and HR executives in the world's leading global brands. Today we're joined by Francesca Molinari, three-time CHRO and most recently Vice President for HR Digital Experience at Adobe. Welcome to the show, Francesca. How are you?
Hi, I'm great. How are you, Chris?
Nice to see you again. It feels like, even though we spoke a month ago, it feels like it's been a while.
Yeah.
How have you been?
Every day's like dog years lately.
It's true. How have things been? How's the world of job searching going during these times for you?
Yeah, such an interesting time to be a candidate. As we've talked about, I'm looking for my, exciting new chapter, which was a decision I made before I was aware of COVID, and before we were in the pandemic that we're in. So it's a fascinating time to be a candidate and, to be looking and evaluating new opportunities without a lot of the tools and inputs that we usually do, like going into offices, meeting people in person. So interesting times.
Yeah. What's the experience been like? Because I think when we first spoke, you were saying this is the first time in your career when you can remember that you had a career break.
Yeah.
Like in forever, I think, if ever.
That's right. That's right. I've been working a long time, and this is my first break. I didn't really have much of a maternity leave when my daughter was born. She was born very prematurely, so kind of a strange leave there. I really never had dedicated time off. I took it in increments because she was still in the hospital for a long time after she was born. So I had my first maternity leave with my daughter these past few months, but now she's 19. So, a bit different.
Yeah.
But it's been great to spend some family time and to have the luxury of being able to talk to so many different companies and look at so many different opportunities. And frankly, so many different search firms and approaches. It's been really very mind-opening.
Mm-hmm. What have your observations been looking from the outside in, right? You have all of your peers going through arguably one of the toughest times of their careers, right? And obviously, I'm sure you keep in contact with them. What's been your observations from the outside in?
Yeah, in one way, it's so incredibly strange to have, likely the biggest event that, many CHROs of today, have dealt with in quite some time. Likely ever, to have it be so universally complicated. No one's got the playbook on this, right? Nope. There isn't anyone who had advance notice or figured it out or knew exactly what to do and was at the ready. I think there's certainly companies that had a lot of good planning in place and a lot of good structure in place that maybe helped accelerate them during the pandemic. But for this particular run of play, there is no playbook. So it's really fascinating and in some ways, maybe even slightly disappointing to kind of miss out on this opportunity. But
yeah, I was going to ask you that because there's one side of you, I'm sure, thinking, well, what a tough time. But then there's other side of you saying, what so much opportunity, which I've heard from many of his. It's kind of this balance.
That's right. And also I feel like it gives me the perspective of watching it more from the outside. So I'm not down in the details of my particular organization or company where I have the benefit of speaking to a lot of peers and getting this panoramic view and really getting, a sense of what's going on from this, incredibly luxury position of sitting on the outside. So it is both, both frustrating and a privilege.
Yeah, no, I can completely get it. What are the things that you've taken away that you think in your next role that you'll try and carry in and bring in to that organization based on what you've observed?
Yeah, one thing, I don't know that it's new for me because it's long been a hallmark of, my practice and my team. Excuse me. But the candidate experience, as a candidate, I've seen such a wide range of treatment, frankly, as a candidate, and in my own personal experience, more likely I am the one, and my team, certainly are help leading candidates through a process where we are both looking for the right candidate for our company and our opportunity, but also, creating a brand experience for them with our company. And so I do think there's, a lot of work yet to be done. Now that I'm sitting in the candidate chair, I can report we've got some work to do, in terms of thinking thoughtfully. And I'd say in this day and age, even more creatively about how do you engage with your candidates, and whether they are selected or not, they've had an interaction with your brand. They are representing you in the marketplace. I certainly have lots of people checking in on me and asking how things are going and what I thought of this company or that company. And it's really a missed opportunity when you're not thinking about your candidates as exposure to your brand and your company, not just from an employment perspective, but commercially as well. And so I think we have some work to do based on sitting in the candidate chair.
Yeah. Based on the sort of candidate experience, the journey, what part of the journey or experience do you think we have the areas for the most improvement, the opportunity for most improvement?
Yeah. One thing I've long felt is we could do a better job about using the hours and hours and hours we invest in the process. So if you have a candidate have 1 hour meetings with 8 people, are you really getting 1 hour times 8 people, worth of data? When I sit down for the 7th time with the same company and do my career walk yet again, that is not the best and highest use of your time with me. So things I've done, with my team in the past is really making sure, especially when you have a senior level candidate, that you're mapping out the experience so that you're maximizing the data and input that's coming in. So let someone do the career walk. Let someone do, the mission and the values that this person is holding dear, what they're looking for in their next assignment. Let someone else talk about. And so really that you're getting the advantage of, all of those conversations as opposed to what seems like an awful lot of duplication of questions and missed opportunity.
It's such a good point. I was literally having flashbacks of previous interviews whilst you were talking about that. And I've been in interviews where I've seen 3 or 4 different people that have all asked me the same questions.
Yeah.
I'm like, wait a minute, it's like an interrogation at this point. I've gone,
Yeah.
I've gone over the same things, and I've come back in a separate day, and someone else is going over the same things I've asked the day before. And I remember being a young professional at the time, thinking, is this normal? Is this how companies do it? Why am I being asked the same things?
You talk.
And a lot of times they haven't.
Yeah.
A lot of times they haven't even spoken about how did your interview go yesterday with Chris? What did you take away from that? Anything else you want to delve into more? It doesn't seem to be happening. So that's a great point.
Yeah, and in my case, I work with executive search firms, and they really, the good ones have done that and then written up this beautiful dossier that I know they've given the company. So, my career walk, as I call it, is something that's been well covered off and documented. You should be getting 8 new hours of information and discussion, in my view.
Yeah. Do you find it's people a little bit more like interviewing a CHRO? Must be quite intimidating, considering is a huge part of. I'm not saying you're sitting in interviews every day, obviously, but it must be quite intimidating. Do you find that people kind of struggle on their eggshells a little bit when the recent interviews you've been in?
Yeah, I hope it doesn't seem that way. I hope not. I'd like to, but maybe you'd have to ask them, I suppose. I think, several times, and people have different opinions on whether this is good practice or not. in limited doses, and in some instances it can be, but I think there's an open question for any role, not just CHRO, but do you have direct reports of a leader participate in the process, and to what extent? And so I've done, any number of those conversations, and I usually try to open up by saying what I feel in my heart is like, look, this could be awkward, but let's not make it awkward. Let's have a conversation. I am anxious to get to know you. I'm anxious for you to get to know me, and whatever is on your heart, let's have that conversation and make this a good use of your time and mine.
Yeah. It could be interesting for people listening to understand, what is it that you look for? What are you in this next role that you're working? What are you looking for in the next role, Francesca?
Yeah. So it's really it's so simple, but incredibly elusive, perhaps at the same time. I've had the good fortune of being a CHRO 3 times and sitting as part of a leadership team in creating value through talent. That I know that there's a school of thought I think a lot of, which is about the talent to value equation. And I'm not sure I was clever enough to give those words to it, but it's what I've practiced my whole career, is creating value for your organization through your people, through your talent. And so I'm looking to be part of a leadership team and make contributions, including but not limited to the human resources chair. So I think of myself as a business leader first, and my specialty, my craft, my dark art, if you will, is human resources. And so that is obviously the greatest contribution area I will make. That is, as a CHRO, will be mine to lead and own and take responsibility for. But bigger than that is to help sit as a productive member of the team, driving a business forward, making decisions about the business. I've had the good fortune in my past to make decisions about, or contribute to decisions as part of a team about where we sell, how we sell, about the product. Sometimes I think I pretend like I'm an engineer, because I've tried to get in under the hood of different products and made suggestions about, how we think about technology. So that's really, and something for me, and this isn't for everyone, but that is transformative. So I think, there are people who are best at implementing and people who are more builders. And I think I fall into very much the transformation. My career has very much been, the hallmarks have been a lot of high change, a lot of high growth, a lot of the opposite of growth, ramped down a number of companies. I've been through Chapter 11 situations, the financial crisis. I've opened, I grew up in retail, so I've opened stores, closed stores, opened offices, mergers and acquisitions from all sides, including being acquired. And so I think, I am very comfortable in high change environments, and I'm looking to create something that is really transformative. And I'd say, and I'm sure anyone on the podcast who's a CHRO today or aspires to be one, would say the relationship with the CEO or the leader, if general manager, president of your division, whoever that business partner is. And if you are a business partner, you'll know this well. That's just the most important. That's the make or break, I think, of your engagement and satisfaction and contribution. So finding that right click. I've had it before.
What's the secret sauce then? What's the secret success to a good CHRO CEO relationship in your experience?
Yeah. I think it is being able to get to. It doesn't start at hello, but holding up the mirror to one another. Right. This should be a very two-way relationship, not I'm here, CEO, to make you better, although I am, but you are also here to make me better. So I think the best relationships are very two-way, where there's intense trust, where you are working together for the good of the organization, where there is a safe space, because the CEO job, like the CHRO job, can be very lonely. And you do need a safe space to have dialogue. You are confidant, to a CEO as a CHRO. So I'd say trust, the ability to hold up the mirror, the ability to help make each other brave, encourage one another to have courageous conversations, to confidently hold up an opposing point of view without fear of, what negative outcomes to that.
Yeah, many HR leaders share that with me in private, that they sometimes don't want to speak up because they may lose their job. And others say to me, the key to my success with my CEO is that I hold up that mirror, is that I challenge, and that's what they appreciate, and that's the strength of the relationship, right? It's what's best for the people in the organization. And you have to, many say to me, I'm willing to lose my job, Chris, for what I believe in.
Totally.
As well. So super important. And I know many CHROs that have walked away from roles where they felt like they didn't have that relationship in place because they can't make change, which is why they're there for, right? To have impact, like you said.
Yeah. When it's good, it's great. When it's bad, it's perhaps something to be reassessed.
Yeah, exactly. Obviously, the title we put up on the screen was "What's Next for HR Leaders' Careers." HR as a function itself and the role has massively changed, right, over the last 14 years I've been in it. Come a long way. How do you think it's going to change, and do you think that current events has accelerated some of that change that the role of a HR leader would be? We're seeing a lot more focus on the well-being, health and safety now has a whole new meaning to it after this crisis. Where do you think the future role of a CHRO is going to, what the areas they're going to be focused on?
Yeah. I would say to the extent that, an HR team was in a bit of a dark corner and not really part of a business or plugged into a business, certainly, events as of late have brought HR, into the spotlight. In many cases, that's been extremely positive, and I think companies are, appreciating or reappreciating or newly appreciating their teams and that talent for the first time, because there is, will continue to be just a tremendous reliance on our teams and our capabilities during the challenges that we've had in 2020. But I think, the challenge of a spotlight as it shines on you is, it's also illuminated in many cases. You and I had chatted about this previously, that some teams are not up for that challenge.
Yep.
And so, that's something we're certainly seeing. I think there's, so that the spotlight is on. People often say they want a seat at the table or they want exposure. Well, you need to be ready for that. Exposure is something I often caution people about. Are you ready for that? And so, there's certainly the area of being so front and focal in handling of the pandemic, which requires an incredible amount of agility, of empathy, of the ability to pivot, because every day was, new information. I also think as we think about what's next, and you and I have talked about this as well previously, COVID is not the only thing going on. And I don't say that in any way to minimize the situation, the severity, and that it gets, heaping portions of our time and attention, as it should. But we have businesses to run, and we have, things to do that we've got to be, as leaders in any situation, including a crisis situation. We don't get to run just one train down the track. We're in a train yard and we need to keep all of the trains running on time. And so I think the HR teams that are going to be most successful, especially going forward from this point forward, can get to getting on other business as well, and aren't kind of stuck in this COVID frozen paralysis only. And so I think some of the things we'll be leading on collectively as the HR industry will be rethinking our workplaces. So much attention is given to the physical places where we work. How important will that be going forward? Thinking about sustaining, remote work or blended work approaches. Many companies I talk to are actually finding they're faring a lot better than they had expected. And so, and are frankly taking some savings from the cost of putting a person in an office. I think the good ones are reinvesting a portion of that back to employees, enabling them to set up home offices and for the various expenses they might have while they're remote. But others are beginning to think about this as, perhaps a whole new business model that could save a lot of expense. And, frankly, in my experience, I've worked remotely for many years. So this isn't new for me. And I've really believed, there's some roles where you need to be in seat, you need to be co-located. So, obviously, if you are, there's roles for which that is required. But where there is flexibility, I've long believed when we were spinning out Magento from eBay, we took the approach of we really want the best person for, these roles where we can be adaptable it helped us attract talent that as a smaller company, we might not have been able to attract otherwise, but for the fact that it was compelling to people to even speak to us because they could sit wherever they want and live wherever they want. And that could be a very compelling reason why they might speak to your organization and ultimately join and be engaged and retained, in your organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I completely agree. Back to your earlier point then, you were talking about the balance between, being stuck in paralysis for the COVID and then putting projects on hold and focusing on business must go on. Because I'll be honest, even as a small startup, we were stuck in that paralysis for a little bit. And I was like, actually, business needs to go on, right? If I don't focus on moving forward and where we're going, what we're doing, there won't be a business to come back to. But it's easy to say, but it's tough to be in a position, right, as a HR leader right now, where you're managing the crisis and trying to focus on delivery of projects. What making the decision of what gets put to one side. It's tough.
Yeah. It is. I mean, you and I spoke a lot about the choices you've made, and I know I'm not supposed to interview you, but you have such a great story. And one day, I know you'll honor my request, and I'm going to interview you.
We're going to do it. We'll do it.
You told me a great story about, which I'll kind of repeat for you, about how you made that choice point of, I want there to continue to be a business on the other side of this. I need to be able to do that, have some revenue streams, retain my team. And you've completely reinvented in short order. I was just absolutely shocked to learn what you did do just a very short while ago, and what you do now, and incredibly well. And I think there is a lesson in that for all of us about that agility. It may not be what we had wanted or planned. It might not be fair, but life isn't always fair, and we have to be grown up about it and move on. Mm-hmm. Yesterday, I was on a very small parent discussion group with my daughter's university, and the first half was dedicated to treatment of COVID and what the plans are, which, again, half an hour in an hour's discussion, completely appropriate. I mean, that obviously is top of mind, especially as parents who have sent their children, in this case, abroad. My daughter goes to school in the UK. But the second half was about how they're carrying on with their exciting plans and how they will be continuing to enrich the university. And I was so impressed as a leader, right? I was there as a parent, but thinking about leaders who impress me and leaders who lead organizations that have the ability. We don't get to be left or right-handed right now. We have to be ambidextrous. We've got to be able to hold COVID in our hand and hold our business and moving forward and positivity and sustaining our businesses through these difficult times and reinventing where necessary to help us thrive for a long, long time to come.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like for me, it was quite difficult. Every event company, which is where most of our revenue came from, everyone, I would say 99% furloughed employees. But I kind of looked at the research from the 2008 crash, and the companies that stuck with it and pushed through and reinvented themselves and innovated, they're some of the most successful companies that we all use and talk about today. So I was like, do I put my career and the future of my employees and their well-being and their livelihoods in the hands of our government and hope, and just that's not, hope's not a good strategy for me, that we come through this, or do we kind of knuckle down? And this wasn't a decision, by the way, Francesca, I made myself. I sat down with a team. We made this as a group. I was like, this is some of our options. What do you guys want to do? One is go on furlough like most of our friends and family, and we've weighed it out. The other is a lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, kind of more time, energy, and input actually than ever before, but we're almost taking hold of our own destiny and where we're going. And everyone unanimously was like, that way. We're going that way. It was a hard way as well, and that's why most people, it would have been very easy for us to say, okay, we're just going to shut down and weigh down.
But there's so many micro lessons in what you've just shared, right? So if I were to pull that apart, it was, you didn't kind of come in over the top and say, it's going to be this way only. You co-authored your strategy together with your team, and that buy-in was necessary, because you could have demanded that they adapt and pivot and be agile, but you have a very small but incredibly talented team, I know, but it's a small number of people. And if even one or two of them, in their hearts weren't bought into this strategy, think about the loss of productivity you would have had through that lack of engagement. So making sure you created a vision with them, that you were aligned and locked around this new vision, that everyone understood the trade-offs and what the choices were, and then they helped co-create that solution with you. I mean, that's leadership, right? There's the lesson right there in a microcosm with a very small team. But there isn't better leadership than that, in my view.
Yeah, I wish I could say it was all part of the master plan. It just kind
never is. Someone once said to me, I spoke to a group when I was at Adobe of emerging female leaders. I was on a panel, and they said, "How did you get where you are?" And I'd say, "I'd lie. First of all, you can't retrace it, so I'm not sure that would even be helpful. I can tell you what step A, B, C, and D was, but you can't retrace it. You can't recreate it. And while I can look in the rearview mirror and make sense of things and say, well, from this opportunity, I got this skill set or these, and taken collectively, it all makes, just a ton of sense. But it was not a master plan. It unfolded as it went. And somehow through the rearview mirror, it all makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, when people ask me about leadership, I always just say, like, I lead how I don't want to be led. So I had some really bad managers growing up in my early career, and I was like, let me just not do that.
Yeah.
and I remember saying, really old school manager, Chris, they're not your friends. You don't talk about your feelings with them. You don't share personal things, right? They're your employee, you're the employer. And I was like, this just doesn't seem right. It's like, it's exhausting not being myself every day. If I have a bad day or I'm feeling anxious or not well, I'm going to tell my employees that. I don't have to be a superhero every day and pretend that I'm invincible, because it's not the reality. Because when they're feeling down and when they're feeling like they need help, they're not going to ask me. They're not going to talk otherwise if I don't demonstrate that myself.
Yeah.
So, and I don't have all the answers, and that's okay.
Yeah. You remind me, I'll say it cautiously, but I spoke with a family member just yesterday. Personal conversation, obviously. But she shared that we are New York family originated, and on 9/11, her son's football coach, her son was in high school, her son's football coach literally on the day called her to see how her son was, how the family was everyone okay, and accounted for. And that remained, with her, obviously now, many, many, many years later. Compare and contrast now, she works for, I'll just say, an organization. And she's furloughed and has been for quite some months already. And managers have been told strictly to not reach out to their employees and not to check in. I know.
Why?
I mean, she is not a manager. She's an individual contributor, so she does not know. But she is sitting there. It's always interesting to speak with her, because I get the employee perspective, right, on what the organization looks like through her eyes, and she just can't believe that people wouldn't be encouraged just to check in and see how they're doing, to connect as human beings, right, and to say we still care. We know that you're on furlough, and how are things going? How is the family? It's craziness to think that wouldn't be permitted.
I don't even know where to go with that. It's crazy. One of my best friends, Ben, he just started a new role as a recruiter. Just started in the business, and I said to him, he was furloughed, and I said, how you been? Because I know he suffers from anxiety and mental health issues like myself, and so I wanted to check in on him, see how are you, and I said, how has the business been in terms of supporting you? And he said to me, you know what, Chris, it was amazing, because every week Jenny, who I've never met before, gives me a call just to say, how are you, Ben? I've never met Jenny before, no idea who she, but she just checks in with me once a week, just asking me how I am. And I've shared more with Jenny than I have with some of my closest friends and family, just telling her how I'm feeling. If today I'm having a bad day or not a bad day, and he was saying that made such a world of difference. And he was super excited to get back to work when they, but it just doesn't take a lot of effort just to pick up the phone.
Jenny, whoever you are, put her on your talent radar. She's on mine now.
Out there, right? And and those are small. Anyway, that's a crazy story you just shared. I don't understand. I can only imagine that they're trying to avoid any type of issue that may arise. So rather than actually, they're just trying to. It was just anyways.
There's policy. I don't even know what policy that could be.
I don't know.
Or what law that might violate.
I think it's the fear of like if they make any, I think it's just bad management.
And Chris, therein I think is the difference, and this is where great human resources leaders and great leaders in general, I think, get separated from from others, is knowing when to follow your heart, to do the right thing, to not necessarily have the strictest interpretation of of the rules, if you will. I mean, when I very first started my career, my first job out of college, I was a department manager for Macy's, which is a big department store chain in the United States, and a brand new. And about a week or so into joining, I was engaged, and my would have been future father-in-law passed away, and I was only with the company a matter of days, literally. And my Lisa Reiner, wherever you are, thank you. My manager, Lisa Reiner, I will never forget. And here we are, 30 years later, I will never forget her kindness, her empathy. I whipped open my little handbook and said, okay, bereavement leave, I do need to go to the wake. I'm so sorry. And her response was like, throw that thing out. What do you need? This is your fiance. This would have been your father-in-law. You take the time you need, you go do what you need to do. And, let me tell you, the few days that I took off, were so paid back in my engagement, in my commitment, and that's certainly not why she did it, is because she was doing the math to say, well, if I give a few extra days here, it wasn't that. It was empathetic, it was real, and it was genuine. But practically speaking, looking at it through a productivity and engagement lens only, not even through a compassionate lens, she was repaid, and the company was repaid back, so many fold during my time there. And the fact that I still hold it up as an example of, maybe the rules said I was entitled to this, but she was willing to work with me, and my engagement and that was incredible.
I completely agree with you. It's hard to quantify it at the time, and you shouldn't really quantify. It's about doing the right things. But I found the same thing. One of the things that people always are surprised about when they meet my team in this office is they're like, oh wow, you've all worked with Chris in a previous company at some point in your career. And when I reached out to certain leaders, team members to come and work with us in the team, they're like, they remember those moments, right? And they're super bought in. So we was like, I'm more than happy to say we're like a family here, right? Anyone can talk about anything, can bring that into the office. And people that join the business, like, it takes them a few days to settle into to our culture of like, you can be open, you can challenge Chris, even if you're the person who's come in on day one. If you have some suggestions, and go for it. It's quite hard for people to get into that mindset. But the fact that you said all these years later, you remember that moment. And we all have those moments. Not everyone, unfortunately, but many people have those moments, and you all carry that with you for the rest of your life. As well. So it's super important. Again, even through this, when everyone was telling me, Chris, furlough, you have to furlough, you're going to go out of business. Everyone was telling me that. And it was costing us thousands of pounds, tens of thousands of pounds every month to keep everyone employed, even though we're not making any money. But I knew if we pulled through this together, one, it was the right thing to do, and two, I knew that again the buy-in that we have from everyone here, and everyone's willing to go above and beyond. Not that that's why I did it, but they will remember that. They were like, during those hard times when Chris and Shane could have let us go, and they wouldn't have been upset at us. They understood that we're a small business. We're like, you know what? If we're going to eat into our cash reserves to make this happen and do right by employees, that's what we're going to do, because that's part of our why, our purpose, our culture, our values. And now we have to stand by it more than ever, to be able to do that. When many companies have these amazing, beautiful corporate values, but when the crisis hits, all of a sudden they go out the window.
Oh, wait, but let me say something about that, because, I talk about that a lot, and people who know me well know I'm super passionate about that. You do not need fancy words on a wall or your 5 things. Everyone's got their 5 things. And you know what? Everyone's 5 things sound the same. Like, I have heard every version of, team and owner. Okay, got it. You've got your values. That's great. And I'm not minimizing values or the value in having a collective set of words that you can lock arms around. What is so much more important, though, is how people experience your organization, and do you live the values? So, just because you've got a fancy mural that has your 5 words, that really means nothing if you don't live those things. And if I were to choose between a company with all of the logos and swag and gear around their values, and the company that, maybe is, smaller and hasn't put time and attention to their 5 words yet, but you could ask anyone and they would give you, you'd hear the same thing over and over again. I would choose the company that actually lives out its values every time, because a lot of companies have them. I'd say, not everyone really lives them and embodies them. If you truly live your values, then the unknown is so much easier for you. That is your North Star. You could be hit with any crisis, the pandemic, I mean, you name it. There's so many things that come into our life that are unexpected, but if you know what your values are, you've got a starting point for how you take that next step. If you as a company value being transparent, then it does not at all surprise me that you gathered your team together and said, look, guys, we've got a tough decision here. We can go down this path or this path. And I want to be honest with you. If we go down this path of furlough, this is what it might look like. This is how long I could feasibly keep the doors open. And that's,
definitely.
So I give you a lot of credit again for clearly having a values-laden organization, even if you don't have, a mouse.
By the way, we don't have the posters on the wall. We don't have the posters on the wall.
You don't need them.
Yeah, exactly. We do have a picture that we drew. So we have like I'm a visual person, so we drew a picture of our 3 to 5 year plan, and it's literally like a big piece of paper with marker pens, and we kind of drew out where we're going, what we're doing. But again, it's something actionable that we live and breathe, as opposed to just being 5 bullet points on the wall. It's not very inspiring. I'm going to go back to your career for a second, Francesca. Looking back at your career, you've had an incredible career. What's the one project or transformation you've led that you're most proud of, that stands out to you?
Oh, goodness.
That's a big question there.
I'm old. I will say, so for those who are familiar with the company Magento, we were a divested company from eBay, later acquired by Adobe. So Magento was an interesting, the transformation I think I'm most proud of, there's a lot baked in there, but Magento was a prior acquisition that eBay had done that had over the years been fully functionalized. So it was not a P&L. It was a fully functionalized product that lived within a bigger business. The business got sold off and Magento spun out separately. We had 6 months of shared services to create all of the infrastructure around a business: finance, HR, IT,
everything.
Our physical buildings, 475 people, 7 countries. So complex. Several different product lines that didn't necessarily hold together previously, but a few products and services came with us. And to the point of we couldn't afford to be left-handed or right-handed, that is an excellent example. We didn't have the luxury of saying, can't talk to you employees. I need to make sure, we can pay you and that we have offices to go to. And, we had in parallel to hold all of these activities associated with separating and standing up a company, which I can assure you was a very full-time job. While at the same time, we were moving from on-prem to the cloud, we were moving from more of a small and mid-sized business and home office business into more of an enterprise selling solution. We had to fill out half a leadership team. We were growing extensively. We were delivering on a 2.0 product that had been 4 years in the making. So we didn't have the luxury of saying we're only doing stand up and then we'll get to running the business, or we had people we needed to engage and bring with us during this period of great uncertainty. And 2 years later, and so it was a process, it was a journey, but I'm really proud of being able to help create, I call it refound Magento at that time, from a product within a bigger company to this, 2 years as an independent company where we created a vision, a mission, what we call the cornerstones, which were our values, And we used those cornerstones and baked them into new reimagined HR processes for everything we did. So my CEO gave me the marching order of FM, don't make it bureaucratic. That was as much, guidance as I got. We need a new performance appraisal system. Everyone hates doing performance appraisals. Please don't make it so dreaded. And so, with that marching order, we took these cornerstones, our values, and we started putting them into new, light, agile, reimagined performance discussions and coaching and appraisals, into how we thought about talent, into our interview process, into our employment brand. And very, very proud of the company we created, the transformation that we had for the 2 years that we were an independent company, and what we look like just 2 very, very short years later, when we were sitting in due diligence and ultimately sold ourselves very successfully to Adobe. And Magento lives on as a part of Adobe now. But that's so I know I cheated a bit. I put a lot of transformation in there, but I couldn't pick just one. I guess I could try to tease one out.
Sure. What advice would you give to your peers who if they were to go for a similar undertaking? Let's say there's quite a lot going on. What advice?
Yeah.
Anything you've done differently as well, looking back?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think anyone necessarily is going to have that, again, you can't recreate that one. It was a pretty unusual experience to have had, but I'm sure the people on the podcast, will have their own version of incredible challenges, right? And maybe equally scant framing, like, don't make it bureaucratic. That was my guidance. And you've got to do something with that. And so a few things we did, I think, were really unique. When we created our cornerstones, our values, we started with the employees. And kind of to the point I was making earlier, it was like, well, we might not have our 5 words because we used to belong to another company that had their own values, but we've been operating for some months now as an independent company. And so we started with asking our employees, what do you think are the company values? And we really didn't know what we would get. And then we did one of those, we call them, I don't know if this word translates in the UK, but a wordle, where you put together all the words, and the bigger words are more, more responses. So we did the wordle, and, the words emerged, right? Our values were there. They were so clear. And so then we began the process of refining the language. The next thing we did that I think is a good best practice is, we needed to create the vision, the mission, the values, which we call the cornerstones. We needed a brand new approach to performance management and rewards and recognition. We appointed business leaders to be the executive sponsor of those teams. So obviously my team, the human capital team, was doing, the arms and legs behind that, and so much leadership behind it. I don't mean to say it
needs to be led by the leaders.
It needed to come from a leader. So we chose a leader who was super, super passionate about culture, had a very strong point of view, who was considered a culture carrier in the organization. And he and a member of my team, co-led that effort. And I think it's a very different thing when an HR business partner or the CHRO stands up and says, here's our new performance appraisal system. It is entirely different when a business leader says, here's our new way we're going to praise performance. And I need this as a leader, and I believe in this, and I helped to create this. This wasn't something the HR team went off and did in a locked conference room. And so I will tell you, I don't know at the end, Chris, that the product, the end result, was so much different than, frankly, if my team had gone and locked ourselves in a room. That isn't to say there wasn't value added from other people. I don't mean that at all. But, I'm not sure it was such a departure from where we might have landed a lot more quickly had I grabbed a couple of folks and just, gotten it done. But the buy-in that we got by at every step of the process, checking in with leaders, doing a mock-up, getting like a minimum viable product there. We really tried to model agile methodology for software development in our HR processes. So we put a minimum viable product out there, get a reaction, iterate, get it out again. When we did our system, our actual tech system, we had some of our toughest engineers use it and give us feedback on the user experience. We had our user experience team give us feedback on the user experience. And so therefore, when we rolled it out, we rolled it out for real, we had so many advocates who were able to say that they were familiar with it, that they had a voice in it. And I do think that's some of the best advice I can give. It may not be the most effective and the swiftest, surest way, but I think the improvements you get in the end result, as well as the buy-in and goodwill you create along the way, is just so worth it.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Sounds so familiar to so many other stories that your peers have told. Because at the end of the day, you can have the best product in the world, but if you don't have the executive sponsor and the buy-in, then it can just fall flat, and vice versa as well. So yeah, it does take time to build those relationships, get the buy-in. But I like the way you did it from the beginning, from the very beginning. You involved them. A lot of leaders I see trying to involve some of the executives towards more the end, which I think is too late at that point, because they're not really bought in.
And we took our naysayers. So when we did our, focus groups and our testers, I consciously told my team, please pick the person is going to be the first one to complain. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
Love it. Most people avoid them.
Focus groups when you only pick the best employees who only say good things. Like that.
It's not really a diverse perspective, is it?
So no. So we consciously brought into the process. We all know if you're good at your job, right? So-and-so is going to be the first one to say, well, bring them in early. They're going to have an opinion anyway. So may as well make them.
That's a good point. You might as well bring them in early rather than making so much progress and then trying to do a 360 on it. It won't make or 180 on it. Sorry. It doesn't make sense. I feel like we talked forever, Francesca. I'm just conscious of the time. So thanks so much. The 45 minutes flew by pretty quickly. So thank you so much for joining us on the show. I really appreciate you taking the time out to join us.
Thank you.
Before I let you go, I'm going to do a quick fire round. So you weren't ready for this, but no,
that's not fair.
So I'll ask you 5 questions.
Oh, gosh.
And you have no longer than 30 seconds to give us some amazing answers. Are you ready?
No, but
of course you wasn't. What was the number one thing that was holding you back from becoming a senior HR executive?
Imposter syndrome.
Ooh, yeah, definitely a good one. I know how you feel there. What's the best piece of business advice you ever received?
Learn how to speak in front of a crowd, dress for the job you want, not the job you have, and be a good writer. That was all from my mom.
Mm-hmm. Good advice. What's one book you would recommend to our audience, and why? Doesn't have to be HR related, by the way.
Lately, I don't know that there's one book in particular, but during quarantine, sorry, you said 30 seconds. The Daily Stoic. Okay. The Daily Stoic, or anything by Ryan Holiday.
Fantastic. In sort of online resources in terms of staying up to date with current events and keeping yourself in contact with what's going on around you, what kind of online resources do you use? What's your go-to websites or apps?
Yeah, I tend to look more at take my cues from business. So I will look more at business periodicals, frankly, than the human resources periodicals.
So what, the Harvard Business Review, stuff like that?
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. And even, Fast Company and, all the various business publications. I look at all the deal journals that come in every day.
Mm-hmm. And then last question, this is typically normally what's one thing in your business you're most excited about, but what's one thing in your next role that you're most excited about?
Creating value through talent.
Yeah, I could have answered that one for you.
Yep.
Well, look,
she got the T-shirt.
Yeah, you should. Why not? It's always good to create a brand around it, right? But look,
That's right.
For everyone listening, if they want to reach out and say hello to you, Francesca, where's the best place for them to do that?
Sure, I'd enjoy that on LinkedIn, Francesca Molinari.
Amazing. Well, look, apart from that, enjoy the rest of your day. Enjoy the time off while you can, because when you get into a new role, you're probably gonna go, oh, I should have done more.
Absolutely. I know.
It's a real pleasure.
Great. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much to you and to your team as well.
Thanks. See you later. Bye.
Okay, take care. Bye.
Bye.